Do you think there is a war on white people, white males in particular? You can have organizations for blacks, Jews, Hispanics, Mexicans, etc., but if anyone came up with a white organization or support group, then they are immediately labeled a racist. You also have affirmative action and the promotion of multiculturalism from the left. Is there a war on white people, and if so, why?
Mm. Yeah, what is that? I want, I want and believe in self-determination for my people, said the black man. I want and believe in self-determination for my people, said the brown man. I want and believe in self-determination for my people, said the white racist. So, yeah. Well, what
Yeah,
do you think?
I mean, I'm not talking about when I talk about white people. I'm not talking about like George Bush or Bill Clinton because there's not a war on for them. I'm talking about the average, everyday, round the folk, white person. I think there is. I think it has to do with either the I don't even know if it's a Zionist controlled media or the communist socialist left, but I think they want to break up the family. And I think there's something about white people. I mean, I see it every day in the news, racism, racism. And like you said, you've been all over I mean, I've traveled, I've never met a racist white person. I mean, I literally have never met, I mean, it's like hunting for Godzilla or something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see a lot of people focusing on the lack of multiculturalism in Japan
Or Israel.
or the lack of multiculturalism in Israel, for instance. And so, like, I don't see a lot of people saying, well, the problem with Japan is, they need more Australian Aboriginals and Nordic people in order to mix things up a little bit. And I don't see a lot of people saying about Israel, they need a lot of pygmies and Germans and, to go in there and mix it up a little. So there's a huge challenge with immigration, and feel free to cover my ass while I go out on extremely thin ice here, because I know a lot of libertarians are very keen on immigration, and I am in many ways too. I'd like for the entire category to be scrapped and just call it moving. It doesn't matter where people live or what they live, but culture exists. We have to recognize and understand and accept the reality that culture exists, and it's not actually that hard to figure out what happens when cultures tend to collide.
Right.
So, I'm sorry, what was your name again?
John?
John. Okay, John, let's say you move to China, right? Now, the dominant ideology in China remains communism to a large degree, right?
Yeah.
Or if you go to Japan, it's what, Shinto religion or whatever. Anyway, so if you move to China, are you going to go and become a communist and speak Chinese and lose your English and really blend in with the local population?
No, I'd probably stick out like a sore thumb. But
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, all we have to do is think of going to the most exotic place we can think of. Would we abandon our existing culture and language and religion and ideal set or belief set or whatever? Would we be like we had been born there rather than born wherever our culture is in our origin? I think the answer is pretty clear that we would not. Now, the melting pot in America, which is the idea that people come from around the world, but they adopt American values and separation of church and state and the republic and limited government. All they come and they absorb, and it takes a while, but they do it. Maybe second generation or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's sort of the idea behind the melting pot, and that works. But there's ways in which it doesn't work, and one of the main ways it doesn't work is that if people move to a country and there's a huge, what we would call an expat population, or there's a huge area where millions of people who from the host country's culture all live there, all reproducing that culture, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever been to a Chinatown in a city?
I've actually lived there in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. So that's about the biggest Chinatown in the States, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's really China in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, they've got like
the market.
God knows what skinned animals out there. Don't you have any place in the store for this food? And it's, yeah, I mean, I've taken some strolls down when I was in the business world. We did some business in San Fran, and I mean, it's really different. The smells, the people, the language, the science. I mean, it's really Chinese, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when people come over from China, they generally, not always, but in general, if they have a choice, they would like to go to Chinatown, right?
Yep.
That's why it's there. That's why it exists, because they like to go to Chinatown. And I can't help but understand that. When I went over to do business in China in the year 2000, I spent a couple of weeks in China. And who did I hang with? Well, the other people who were Western. Now, I didn't only do that. I also got my ass handed to me on a plate in ping pong battles that were epic, at least in their loss for me. But and I went to have business meetings where people rubbed my feet under the table and got me all kind of goosed. But and I had business lunches, business dinners with people where I was, I think, continually referred to as the big nosed foreign person. But anyway, but there was also a lot of socializing, and if it wasn't for business, I would have done some of the socializing with the locals. But I also would have, if I was just sort of picturing, if I moved there, where I would want to move to like little North America or whatever it is there, right? And it wouldn't be like I'd never have anything to do with the other culture or anything like that, but it's not natural and it's not particularly easy for people to just say, I'm now Chinese, I'm communist, I'm into this stuff, I'm into that, this is how I'm going to raise my kids, I'm not going to speak my language of origin, I'm not going to have anything to do with the belief systems I came from, I am now in the host country's belief system. Now, I think that can work, and the way that it used to work in America was they used to, they'd have pauses between immigration. Right, so from like 1920 to 1960, and the 1920s to the 1960s, there was very little immigration into America. And because of that, I mean, compared to what came later, because of that, there was much more blending, right? Much more assimilation into sort of the dominant culture. Now, since the 19, and I think in the as late as 1963, 1964, like the vast majority of people in America were Christians who spoke English, kind of thing, right? Now that all changed, and the civil rights, sorry, not the Civil Rights, the Immigration Act, I think in 1965, I think it was 1965. Ted Kennedy was a sponsor of it, and they just shifted. Said we don't want people from as much from Western Europe anymore. We want people from the third world. We want people from India and all this kind of stuff. And of course, a lot coming up from South America, Central America, particularly Mexico.
Well, you let them in, they vote communist, they vote Democrat, obviously.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the Democrats want, I mean, this is why Obama has got this shadow immigration system going where like a couple of million people have been granted work visas, even though they're way outside the bounds of what's been authorized by Congress, because they just, power-hungry bastards who... Anyway, so with these constant waves of immigration, what happens is you get these Hispanic neighborhoods. You get, a variety of different neighborhoods that grow up. And because there's wave after wave of immigration coming in, there's not that assimilation factor that occurs. And so, like, southwestern California has become pretty significantly Hispanic. And the Republican Party's basically had to, as far as I understand it, give up the entire state. It's not, they're never going to vote for Republicans, right? So I don't know that there's a war on white people. I think there is a very strong desire for the Democrats to have power. And what's happened is that they've lost union power because unionization in America has declined considerably. They've lost the power of forced union dues, and so they've needed to find some sort of substitute. And they've not been willing to engage in the war of ideas. Like even after conservative has been slandered repeatedly and it seems almost infinitely for the past 30 or 40 years, and certainly since McCarthy, that conservatism has been so slandered, but still twice the number of Americans identify as conservative as liberal. So they've really been unable to win the war of ideas, and so they're basically just using the war of moving human bodies now. I mean, it's not a very noble way to get your way, but that's just the way it is. So I think that the war on the family, of course, as well. I mean, it's just another way to create a Democrat voting bloc. I mean, single women and single moms in particular overwhelmingly vote for the Democrats. So they have every incentive to split families, and they have every incentive to create conditions in which single motherhood flourishes. And so, yeah, this attack upon the family and this relentless immigration that does not give time for assimilation is, it seems to me, it's just pretty much a massive political ply on the part of the Democrats to bypass the need for a debate on the ideas. And it seems to me they've got more than a finger, but an elephant foot on the scale. And Mike, if you could just look up the way in which the demographics have changed over the past 40 years, just a tiny little project there. And you could read those off if you get a moment. So, yeah, I don't think it's a war against white people and white males. I mean, let's be honest about it. It's mostly white males. But I think it's just the necessary byproduct of what is needed by the Democrats to gain and maintain political power. I'm sorry?
Where do you think it comes from, though? Is it a communist movement? Is it a Zionist movement? Because it seems very messed up. Yeah, I think they've
communists for sure. So
they've infiltrated somewhere, sometime.
Yeah, communists for sure. I mean, we've gone into this. We've got the Truth About the Race War.
Yeah, I've seen all your videos.
And the Truth About Immigration. Yeah, communists for sure. And that's not any kind of conspiracy theory. That's the outspoken aims and goals of the Communist Party, both in Russia and in the USA, to provoke as much minority resentment and to use minorities as a tool by which to destabilize a society and drive a wedge through any kind of unity of the Republic, not Republican, the party, but Republican idealism. And so that's definitely been the case. I mean, the degree to which Jews are associated with communism, was quite a lot of the founders, of course, the major theoreticians and so on. But, they all lost to Stalin, and then there was a purge against the Jews in the Communist Party in the 30s. So, but the degree to which it's driven by Judaism is, depends which time slice of history you're looking at. You'll find more or fewer. But communists, again, they've been unable to win the war of ideas, and they certainly haven't been able to win the war of history. They've only been able to win the war of how many bodies can we pile up so that they reach halfway to the sun.
Yeah, they don't seem to sleep or anything. I mean, like Hillary Clinton, how old is she? Like, you have all the money in the world, all the power in the world. Like, you think you'd retire on an island somewhere, but they just keep coming back. I mean, these people,
it's an addiction. No, listen, political power. Political power is an addiction.
I mean, it must be the greatest power ever, or they're not human. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
Like either David Icke's right,
definitely human, or which is what makes them so tricky. They're cyborgs, Cylons. But no, a political power is an addiction. I would not. These people almost never exit from public life willingly, because it's a high, and the amount of emptiness, depression, nihilism, and I don't know, perhaps even suicidality that would be on the other side of them not receiving this kind of public attention is. It would be horrifying. Would be horrifying. I mean, I'm willing to be a minor public figure for the cause of philosophy, but I have no, no particular desire to be a public figure, other than the fact that it's kind of necessary to serve philosophy. But I think these people just really, really love it.
It must be a high that maybe we don't know, experience it yet. I mean, it must be that great because they're 70, 80 years old. They don't stop. So it must be.
But I mean, not everyone likes cigarettes, right? Some people try it and hate it. I couldn't imagine political power as being anything other than repulsive. I'm sorry?
Just putting on a suit every day and lying. Lying reading off a script or whatever they're doing. I mean, it's.
I mean. They're human, but they're interspecies predators, I would assume.
Yeah, psychopaths.
Yeah. So, I mean, the changing demographics are kind of important, right? I mean, whites, 85% of Americans in 1950, down to 63% in 2011, projected to be 47% in 2050. Hispanics, 3.5% in 1950, 17% 2011, projected to be 29% by 2050. And Asians, 0.6% 1950, 5% 2011, projected to be 9% in 2050. And yeah, there are challenges. There are challenges when it comes to integrating people with a very different culture. And the other thing too is that, like, everybody knows that multiculturalism, I mentioned this on the show before, but everybody knows that multiculturalism means race. It's not about culture. But multiracialism is what they're talking about. Because if I were to say, oh, on the board of Free Domain Radio, not that there's a board, but if on the board of Free Domain Radio, we are very multicultural because we have a British guy, an Irish guy, a French guy, and a German guy. What would people say? But that's not multicultural at all, because you're all white. It's like, well, then let's not call it multicultural. Let's call it multiracial. And the degree to which races, particularly races combined with different cultures, mix well together remains an open question. There's studies that show that multiculturalism within neighborhoods causes significantly negative consequences. There are lots of different arguments and problems with multiculturalism. I don't have any particular answer other than we should all be philosophers and forget all of that nonsense. And that's the best gift that I have to offer this particular question. But I grew up in England where there were some significant cultural differences between us and the Irish. I mean, I would go to Ireland in the summers, visit my father's family and occasionally my father. But the rest of the time I'd be in England, where I was continually warned that if there was an unattended bag or package in the bus shelter, that I should get the hell out because it would likely be an IRA bomb. So, there's some cultural challenges for you that I grew up with right there. And so, yeah, I mean, again, a war on white people. I mean, I think that we're just stepped on the way to power, so to speak. I don't think it's anything particularly personal.
Yeah, I think that it's very strange though. You know how when you mention like libertarianism or you're not have a government, they say, oh, move to Somalia. But when somebody brings up racism, they don't say, oh, you don't like it here, move to Somalia.
Right.
It's but it's just a weird thing. Like lately, it's been bugging me because I just see it in the news every day. Like this guy, Charles Blow is his name. Did you hear that thing about his son in Yale? He got a black cop pulled a gun on a black guy, and he said it's racism. What are you talking about? It's just they seem they want to start some sort of war, and I think it's a very dangerous thing. They want to start like a black against white war, and it's just it's just stupid. It's very low level primitive nonsense. It just seems very, I don't even know how to explain it. It just seems very, it's just low level stupidity. That's what it is. It's hunting for Bigfoot. There's no
yeah
risks.
Look, I mean, there has been a focus on sort of the crimes of the whites or the crimes of the Europeans or whatever it is that's been going on for quite a long time. And look, I mean, to be fair, white people have done some seriously bad shit, mostly to other white people, tragically. I mean, this is the First and Second World Wars, carried off tens of millions of white people. And of course, other races and other cultures too. I'm not trying to magically dismiss that or anything like that. But I think that the near cultural suicide engaged upon by white Western Christians throughout the 20th century was something that I think broke the spirit of Western culture. It's really hard when you're digging your way out of that many bodies to say, yay, us, right? And I think that Where that goes, I don't know. I think that where I'd like it to go is peaceful parenting and anarchism. That's where I'd like it to go. That I think would be the best way to learn the lessons of the past. And of course, I've been reading this audiobook by Lloyd DeMoss called The Origins of War and Child Abuse, which you can get at freedomainradio.com. That's where I'd like it to go. You know, going to appeasement and guilt and throwing money at minorities, which only cripples them, I mean, I think is not the right way to go. But you know, I think that it really broke the spine. If you look at how confident Western culture was in the 19th century, or you could say, I mean, you say white culture, I don't know if that really helps in particular, because there's been lots of non-whites who've contributed magnificently to Western culture and so on. So I just talk about sort of Western European culture with all of its complexities and challenges. But sort of post Renaissance, Enlightenment, Industrial Revolution, and empire, the end of slavery, ending of slavery, more rights for women, and so on. I mean, there was a pretty magnificent run that Western European civilization had. And then the end of that run was running straight into the fucking meat grinder of the First World War. And then from there, staggering into the hyperinflation and stock boom of the 20s, followed by the 13-year Great Recession, culminating in the Second World War, culminating in the Cold War. And this century of potential, this century of progress, this century of optimism, this century of hope, this century of advancement, to end as it did in the endless democides and cultural suicides and slaughterhouses and of all of the 20th century was, I mean, to me is one of the most unbelievably tragic events and changes in all of world history. All of world history. It is brutal. It's horrendous. It had a lot to do with the government taking over education combined with the implementation of central banks. I know that sounds all kinds of not important, but it really is. You can't get willing soldiers unless the government controls the education, which you can find more about in The Truth About World War I. And you can't fund these unbelievably interstellar carnage factories of world wars without fiat currency. And so these two socialistic, if not communistic, infections in Western Europe, government schools and fiat currency central banking, that was fucking it. I mean, that was it. That beat the plowshares into swords. And we've really been reeling from the effects of that ever since.
Do you think that they, I mean, who's they? I mean, that's what I'm trying to think of. It's obviously a leftist communist infiltration. I mean, it's blatantly obvious, but I don't know, where it comes from, but it's just, I don't like where it's going though. It seems very, very collectivist, very, statist. It's a weird thing. I can't even explain it.
Well, as I've made this case before, the they is
The rulers.
No, it's the priestly class who transitioned to the intellectual class. They saw that the ship of God was listing and going down, and they all jumped ship to go to universities and politics and the state. And they took their considerable rhetorical skills, they detached them from their dying God, and they fastened them onto the jugular of the New World. And they continued their black wizardry of language parasitism, and were willing to drive people to war and willing to propagandize people to self-slaughter. It is the oldest enemy of mankind, I believe, is the sophists. The people who can make a worse argument appear the better by emotional manipulation rather than reason and evidence. And we are the fucking ninjas of all time to take these people on. I forgive them in many ways, for they know not what they do. They have simply adapted to use words. I gave this speech, "They control you No, they control humans with language.
Oh, that was a great
They talk
video.
about how
Spells. That's exactly what it is. I mean, that's what they write about in the old, the Old Testament and the old folklore books. That's what it was. That's what a spell is. It's just language.
But the best comment is that, which I didn't even think of at the time, someone posted on YouTube, you spell a word. I mean, it's even right there
That's
in
what
the language.
Jordan Maxwell goes into that. Yeah.
And this emotionally manipulative language that bred itself in the bosoms of dark deities throughout most of human history found it fairly easy to transition from the cross to the flag and from the church spire to the ivory tower. It's a very nimble transition. And the option of working for a living in the free market is anathema. This is not what they're adapted for. It's like asking a fish to live at a treetop or giraffe to feed on sperm whales. This is not what they're adapted to. And I think that fortunately the internet has given us the capacity to bring words and the powerful counter spells, counter magic of reason and evidence. We've been able to, we got 100 million plus downloads of this show, lots of other people working to bring clarity to the world. But it's the human farmers, and the human farmers are not those who use weapons, but those who use words. It's that great line from an old In Excess song. Words are weapons, sharpen the knives, makes you wonder how the other half dies. And the only power in the world is words. Everything else is merely the shadow of power. And that, I think, is where it comes from. Those who have adapted to create the farmers' fences of language in the minds of those who become livestock by believing imaginary language.
Like patriotism and country, religion. I mean, how do you think this thing plays out in the end? I mean, obviously, it can go either way,
It
but
doesn't play out. If I thought it played out, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. It goes where the people with the most will and resolution want it to go. That's where the world goes. The world goes where those who plant the deepest fucking stake in the heart of the world are willing to stand there in the face of all storms and opposition and say, we will not move unless budged by reason and evidence. That is where the world goes. The world goes where those who are willing to stop it, hold still, and swing it around in its orbit, though it dwarfs their very mind. That is where the world is going to go. The world goes where the will takes it. The world goes where you want it to go. That is where the world goes, and no other place. And if they want it more than we want it, they win. And if we want it more than they want it, we win. Because all they have is language. All they have is slander. All they have is negativity. All they have is hostility. All they have is the little whispered lies of ugliness. And we have the giant airstrike sunlight of reason, clarity, evidence, and truth. So how it plays out, what a passive thing to say. Don't mean to bitch on you, but it's a passive thing to say. It's not a train going down a hill, like it either stays on the tracks or it jumps. No. The world has these giant levers called language, and it will fly delicately like a dragonfly, like a helicopter, like a jetpack. It will fly delicately where you move the levers of language to go. That's where it goes. That's where we can fly it. The future is wherever the fuck we want to land the planet. And yeah, we're fighting like sons of bitches for control over the joystick, over the flight sticks, over the rudders. We are fighting like crazy. Elbow, elbow, give me that stick, give me that. Oh, I want that stick. I want to land it in hell. We want to land it in heaven. And if we don't do anything, yeah, we're the passengers in a Taiwanese plane that goes into a bridge. We just passengers. I'm going to see where this thing goes. Well, it's going to go badly. Get to the cockpit, wrestle for the stick. Hi, NSA. Right? But that is where we have to have our mindset. The passivity of how does this play out? What's going to happen to the world? What's the end game? No! Get into the goddamn pilot seat and go for the joystick. It's going to go where you want it to go. And it will only go where the bad people want it to go if we step back and step out.
That's true. I think we obviously have the numbers. I just got to get over that propaganda.
Numbers.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if we have the numbers,
Oh, the
but
numbers of people, not the money. I
we
mean,
have the facts. No, I don't. Fuck the numbers. No, fuck the numbers. Because with the numbers, when you focus on the numbers, my friend,
yeah.
what ends up happening is you say, I will take a stand when there's enough of us.
Right.
No, you take a stand and you bring the people to you by having the stand.
That's true.
Right? Because now, if there are real bullets, you don't do that. Right? You don't do that if there are real bullets. But where the war is merely language, where the war is merely words, then hell yeah, you stand because nothing can hit you but syllables. Sticks and stones, brother, sticks and stones. You stand and you keep trying your barbaric yawp of truth to the very roof of the world. And sooner or later, people look up and say, I don't think that's lightning up there. I think that's human thought, changing physics, changing what I thought was physics, unraveling the matrix, changing the very nature of reality as I have perceived it and as my tribe has perceived it, lo, these many thousands of years. There is someone up there who is undoing history, who is taking a giant Thor hammer of thought, cracking it down on the mountaintop, altering the physics of what we call society. And some people are like, oh, I'm going to the basement. I think I'm just going to hide till this is over. I'm going to see who wins. Shameful. I don't mean you. Shameful, shameful stuff. And there are other people who are like, I'm going to grab whatever I can. I'm going to get up there. I'm going to make some fucking lightning. I am going to go up there and I'm going to alter some fucking physics. Because this tilting world that keeps dragging us down and down and down into the fires of history, into the fucking repetitions of history, but with better weapons and more technology. Evil, networked. Evil, bit enabled. Evil with TCP/IP. Evil with nuclear weapons. Look at that. The free market has given us so much technology. We've armed evil to the teeth. What a great, great job that's been. Yay. No. No! Enough. We go up there and we fucking change history. We take this, whether it's Atlas Shrugged or whatever you want to call it, we take this, we put our fucking shoulders to that tilting slope that's pushing us into hell itself, and we push the fuck back. We push the fuck back. We get our shoulders under it, and we lift that seeming inevitable tilt of the world back. And whoever slides off the other end, I couldn't give a shit. But we tilt this son of a bitch back. We get up there to the mountaintop, we take out the biggest hammer we can, and we strike fire from the feet of the very gods of history. We make them dance to our tune for once. Fuck this inevitability. Doesn't have to be that way. But it will be if all we do is hide.
Exactly. That's some badass shit right there.
Thank you for your call, my brother.
Yep.
Take care.
That was awesome. Thanks.